Rochelle. Hello. When
Yes.
was your birthday?
My birthday is November 27th, 1949.
And when was your high school graduation date?
1967. It was June of 67.
Okay, I have 25 questions regarding your teenage years.
Oh.
So, yes.
Okay.
Alright, first question. What were some popular slang terms as a teenager?
Popular slang terms. I'm trying to think. What did we say? Well, we said things were, I guess at the time we used cool too, but popular slang. You got me on that one. I'm not sure. I'll think about it.
Okay, who were your teen idols that you looked up to?
The teen idols?
Or, not teen idols, but idols that you looked up to that as you were teen.
As I was a teen. I guess we looked up to our president at the time. It was Kennedy.
John Kennedy.
And, because probably, we lost him too, but he was a good role model.
Mm-hmm. Alright, what were your favorite classes in high school?
In high school, I don't know, I kind of enjoyed biology.
Really?
And yeah, I know, I don't
Pretty
know why.
hard.
It was, but it was a good class. And then I took a Russian class that was a lot of fun.
Like Russian language?
Russian language. We had a good time. We had parties. Some of them were at my house. We made the meals that were all authentic, and I remember my mother making borscht and stuff like that. But it was fun because he made it fun.
Alright. Did you have any nicknames?
They used to call me Mo instead of Maureen, and I didn't really like it, but it wasn't like any other kind of nickname. It was just shorten my name.
Yeah. Alright, how would you compare teens back then to today's teens?
I think we were more responsible. We were more respectful. We were already...
Like me, I'm respectful.
Yes,
right?
you are.
Okay.
No, you are. You really are. But a lot of the children nowadays, they don't have respect for the things that they have. They don't appreciate what they've got. It's just like, if it breaks, I'll get another one. We didn't get another one. We were lucky if we got one. So, yeah, I think that's it.
What were your goals or plans after graduating high school?
After graduating high school, I wanted to go on to college, but there wasn't money for me to go to college. So I guess my plans at that point in time were just to help out my mom, and that's what I did. I helped the household.
All right. What were your views on politics?
Back then, it was all, flower power. Oh, that was it. Peace out was one of the sayings. You want to go peace out. That was the big one, was peace. Everything was flower power. So, let's see. Let's go back to that again. I just remember the peace out.
What were your views on politics?
On politics, we were, at that point in time, all my friends were going to NAM, and we were against the war. So I guess the big thing that we were concerned about was peace. And that was why I remembered peace out, because everything was about, let's just get along. And at the time, things were not very good. And like I said, we didn't feel that Vietnam was a war that we should be in. And I lost a lot of friends.
Really?
Joe almost went, So it was really not a good thing. So I guess that was just the main concern, was that somehow, and at that time we had a president that was working towards that goal. And it didn't work out. But that was,
What was your proudest moment in your teenage years?
My proudest moment in my teenage years, boy, they weren't real good. My dad died when I was young. I guess just finally graduating and moving on. Everyone goes, oh, high school's so much fun. It wasn't that much fun as you would think, I guess, back then. So I guess just moving on and hoping that the next chapter would be really good.
What would you do in your spare time?
Back then, I didn't have a lot. We went to parties and dances. There were a lot of dances. So, in spare time, that's kind of what we did. We just had fun like you guys. Parties.
Yeah.
But we had cool places to hang out. We did. There were a lot of...
What were those places?
One was called the Deep End. There was the HUD. There was, the Green Gorilla. These all sound so strange, but they were, they would be a lot of times in churches. But they had the dances, and it was a lot of fun. We'd go to the Palladium, roller skating. You didn't do that. We did a lot of, the roller skating was a cool place to hang out. I know. sounds, but you guys had coach.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was kind of.
All right. What type of clothes did you wear?
Oh gosh. Well, for the most part, we had a code in
A
school.
dress code? Yeah.
Girls had to wear skirts, and they had to be below your knee, although we'd roll them up. You had to make sure that, I mean, nothing. You know, like the girls wear the belly shirts inside. That wasn't allowed. You wore a nice sweater and skirt, and at the time it was penny loafers and your stockings. But you had to do, and guys had to wear nice pants with a shirt and a belt. And if you didn't have it, you got sent home.
Oh.
They make you kneel on the floor to make sure your skirt touched the floor. There was a code. So most of the time we wore skirts and blouses and sweaters, yeah.
What would the parents think when they saw that girls were wearing belly shirts?
At that time, it didn't really happen. It happened a little bit, like after high school when you had the flower power. That was a couple years later. But yeah, there was a dress code, and I think that was pretty much in all the schools. It was different then.
Yeah. All right. What was your favorite type of music?
Oh, back then the Beatles were so big. I know a lot of people with Elvis and stuff. For me, it was the Beatles. That was what we all enjoyed.
Any favorite song?
I don't know. Hold Your Hand was a good one, but I also like the Stones, and a lot of those came a little bit later. But yeah, Wanna Hold Your Hand was a pretty good one.
What is something that you missed from your teenage years?
No responsibility. I guess that would be kind of it. Yeah, teenage years, I don't know. I guess we had fun, driving around in our cars. You guys don't have that. We had the fast cars. We would go places like Skips where you'd hang out, and that was it was kind of cool, just hanging out with your friends.
All right. What were your thoughts on the Vietnam War?
I already told you. We were against it. We couldn't figure out why we were there, and you know what? History proved we shouldn't have been.
Yeah.
So I mean, the views, it was senseless waste of life, and we sent a lot of young men over there for what we considered no good reason. And when they came back, it destroyed their lives.
Yeah.
I know so many that came back and were never the same. So I guess my view was just that we really didn't have a reason to be there.
Did you have any negative views on Nixon?
You know what? I mean, Nixon, he did some bad things, but he wasn't the worst president.
He wasn't as popular, and he wasn't as big as he was till the 70s.
Yeah.
Because in the 60s,
when we were in high
he
school.
ran in 1960 and lost.
Yeah.
But in 64, he didn't
We
run.
didn't have him. So I mean, but as far as Nixon, I know everybody goes. I mean, he did a bad thing, but a lot of presidents did some bad things.
Yeah.
And so, I just didn't think he was
that bad.
Yeah.
What were the major values that you lived by?
Major values that we lived by. Our upbringing was, I guess there was smoking, no drinking, none of that kind of stuff. But I mean, it was just being responsible. We learned to grow up fast. I lost my dad when I was young. You learned respect. You respected your elders, and you learned to, good work ethics. It was like we had a job when we were 16 years old because we had to be able to buy and pay for our own things. I wanted a car, I had to pay for my car. I had to pay for the insurance, I had to pay for the gas that went in the car. And in order to do that, we had, learned a work ethic young. And like I said, respect, which is important, and that you get what you give, which is also, something that's important. I don't know what else. Obviously education's important. I didn't get to finish mine, but I still read a lot and still continue to learn. So I guess just respect, good work, working ethics, and just to be a good person.
All right, and this is kind of off topic from my list, but you brought up how you paid for your own gas. Was it a lot harder when OPEC formed?
When OPEC formed, was it harder?
When they formed, yeah, because back when we drove, you
Yeah.
could get gas for
Right.
25 cents a gallon.
I mean, it definitely is a huge difference. Huge. Back then you had all the independence and you had choices that you quite honestly don't have nowadays as much.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's definitely harder now.
All right. What type of we already went over that. What type of cars did most teams drive?
What do we drive? You were looking at all souped up cars. You know, you had a
Cabinet.
455, we had
Yeah.
442s, GSs. I had a Nova Super Sport. You had, Malibus. They were just all souped up fast cars. But back then there weren't a lot of cars on the
Mhm.
road either, so it wasn't so dangerous driving them. But yeah, we had fast cars, fun cars, pretty cars, big cars. But you know what? They were built like tanks, and you felt safe in them.
Yeah.
You did. Not like nowadays.
What did you think of hippies?
Hippies, you know what? Think about it. Hippies had a great philosophy. You know, they didn't want to hurt anyone. They were all about, getting along. Some of them were lazy, and, of course, a lot of them were on drugs, which necessarily weren't, but yeah, they didn't always groom themselves real well, but it depends on what kind of hippies you're talking about. There were hippies and hippies, I mean, some were real extreme, and others were just, they were protesting for peace, and that can't be a bad thing.
Yeah. What were your thoughts on the shootings at Kent State?
Sad. And you wonder how it could happen.
Mm.
And you wonder how any of it continues to happen. And I guess I don't know. You just wonder what went wrong. It's, one day they're normal, regular teens, college students, and then the next thing you wonder what makes them snap.
Yeah.
So I guess the thoughts are just sad.
Yeah.
Well, what were your thoughts?
Obviously, it's pretty sad. I mean, the protesters and they got shot.
Right.
Yeah, but you don't know. You weren't there, so you don't know what happened.
Yeah.
That's just
They
it.
should have never been shot, but who knows what they would have done? Who knows what they did to the troops that were there? My brother was a policeman in the '68 riots in Chicago, and what those student protesters did to the police, you had to be a special person not to retaliate.
Yeah.
You really did. I mean, it took
I
a
mean,
lot
they're
to hold back.
pushing. The police are pushing back, but then after a while, you get,
Protesting
throwing
is one thing, but
bricks
what,
and cans and things like that. It becomes
yeah,
more
they shouldn't
serious.
have been killed. If they were just students who went to school
Yeah.
there, no, that
No,
shouldn't have
that
happened.
shouldn't have happened.
Alright. If I was to go back to the 60s, what would shock me the most?
What would shock you the most? Let's see. Probably the fact that without internet and without telephone and with limited television stations, I think
Yeah.
we had
There you
maybe 4 to watch, and families sat together and watched those shows.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much, I think that would be the biggest shock, is the lack of electronics and how everything, I mean, I just think about cooking a meal, and if they weren't home for dinner, it just kept getting harder and harder. There was no way to keep it warm and things like that. I mean, we just take
Cell
for
phone,
granted all of
microwave, none of that.
the things we have now. And I would say for
That's a good question.
children your age, the biggest shock, I mean, try to go back and think about no cell phone, no
Yeah.
computers, no calculators,
No cable.
limited TV, I mean, really limited TV, if you even had one. We were excited back in our day. I mean, black and white TV was it. And then eventually, I mean, color TV came
There was
at
color.
the
but
end,
it was
of
not like it
my
is
high
now.
school years. But I mean,
Yeah.
seriously, when I say you sat with the family, or you just, I mean, there were times you watched the little circle that went beep. There were
Indian
times
head.
that was it. Yeah, the Indian head.
Remember that?
But I think that would be the biggest shock to you guys.
Yeah, that's
And your lack of freedom. You guys have a lot more freedom. We
Yeah.
had literally a lot of chores to do, and if you didn't get your chores done, you didn't even think about walking out of a door. And then, I mean, you were home early, and it was just, yeah, totally different. But I think that would be your biggest shock: the electronics no longer existing.
What were like your thoughts on the segregation between white kids and black kids at schools?
Back then, I didn't understand it. We grew up where my family was never, ever prejudiced. I mean, our best friends were, little Oriental girls, and there was just, back then, didn't get it. And quite honestly, I'm thankful that my parents didn't. And my uncle had a maid, but they treated her with respect. She was like this, they just loved her, and the way we felt and the way we were taught and raised and grew up was everyone is a human being, and you treat them, unless there's good and bad in everything, so no, our thoughts were there should never have been any segregation.
Who were the best and worst presidents?
The best and worst. Oh gosh. We have to go back then, not now.
Yeah, back
We have
then.
to go back then. Well, then I still like Kennedy.
Mhm.
And I guess as your worst, even though I defend Nixon, I would have to say he brought.
Nixon wasn't president.
Wait, in our years.
Well, while you were in high school.
Oh, okay. Well, in high school.
At the time, you think
Well,
Kennedy
you only
was
had
the
two
best.
presidents then.
Kennedy and Johnson.
Right. So you'd have to say Kennedy was the best and Johnson was the worst, but Johnson wasn't
that
bad.
bad.
Yeah.
So I have a problem with
Yeah.
that question.
It really wasn't a bad one.
I mean, if you're going to my high school years,
Eisenhower wasn't.
Didn't you go
Yeah.
to high school with Hillary Clinton?
actually she was in South. We were in East. She went to Maine South, so we didn't, and she was a year ahead of us.
A year or two ahead of us.
I think she was a year ahead of us. We got to interact with the kids from the other schools because we had games and stuff like that, but did I personally know her? No.
No.
Too bad, huh? That would have been interesting.
Yeah, it would have. What were some really popular inventions?
Inventions back then. Oh my gosh. Color TV was just coming to be.
Were you excited about that?
Oh God, yes.
Snow blowers.
Those weren't around then. No. The biggest thing to happen was the color TV was coming out. Of all the inventions, I mean, well, we had fast cars. That was always fun, but that's not really an invention. I mean, that would have to be the biggie. Was the color TV coming out? Radios were getting smaller and portable. That was something. I know that sounds silly, but most of them were
Jet
plug-in.
planes.
Transistor radios were something that teenagers could associate with, and getting, color TV, which we didn't really have we didn't have the money for it. I know, they're just, as far as inventions go, that's a tricky one. There weren't a lot that I can say in my high school years.
They made certain things better, like TVs got bigger, color came, you got FM radio instead of
that
just
was,
AM. But nothing, I can't remember
8
anything.
tracks. Went to cassette. They did. They went into cassette, so I guess doing a
8-track
smaller tape, that was kind of a biggie. Oh, we didn't have
Not
as many
much,
inventions. I mean, now, gosh, every day something is advanced and new and better. It just wasn't there. Simpler time.
What was something you really wanted as a teen?
Something that I really wanted as a teen. Let's see. Got my car, but I had to work for it. Something that I really wanted. I don't know. We didn't have much. We
The only
didn't
thing I
want
could
for
think
much.
of was the car.
A car was a biggie, but for me,
Yeah, that
it
was your
wasn't a
biggest-
luxury. It was transportation. So, what did I want? Boyfriend. Oh! I don't know. I really didn't. I mean, we didn't have a lot, and I guess I guess at that time, for me, it would have been maybe to have nicer things. As growing up, my dad died young, and we were never rich to begin with. So I didn't have the things that everyone else had. It didn't kill me, but I guess maybe just to have nicer things. I guess that's what I would have wanted to have, and not to have had to go to work so young. But for me, that I know it sounds superficial, but going back as a teen, that would have been to be. I mean, not that I was ever. I had people always accepted me, and back then we had greasers and skinheads, and we were one or the other, and I was kind of in between, and both accepted me. You get to be
Skinheads
lucky.
nowadays are German radicals.
Yeah, well, that's
Yeah,
not.
they're
We're not
cheap.
going back then.
No, we're
But
not-
what I'm saying
not those
is,
kind of skinheads.
I was so I guess, but just to be more accepted by the girls that were, we called them rah-rahs. They wore the pretty clothes and they had the pretty hair.
Were they nice?
No.
They weren't?
Not really. The girls they had a lot of girls that were stuck up that were the pretty girls. But I mean, I didn't have a problem with them. I wasn't a threat to them. And, again, it comes with learning respect young and even respecting your own peers. And, yeah, I guess for me that would have been it, just to have nicer things.
What was your first job?
My first job, well, we could go back when I was 12. I was farmed out as a mother's helper. But my first job that Social Security paid, I worked at a clothing store called Stewart's. And I was a sales girl. And in 3 weeks, they promoted me, supposedly, which wasn't, because I sold too much. And you got commission back then, so they put me on bookkeeping. So my first job was working at Stewart's, and I started out as a sales girl and then went to bookkeeping. And
Did you like it?
No, I hated bookkeeping. You were stuck in a room by yourself. It was more fun on the floor, the greeting people and saying hello and selling clothes instead of doing bookkeeping. But it was still fun because there were a lot of girls and from different high schools, and we kind of all got together, and that made it fun. And I stayed there for a long time, so I had to have liked it.
Last question. What was the biggest what was the thing you got into the biggest trouble from at school?
The biggest trouble from? I mouthed back to a teacher.
What'd you say?
It goes back to the skirts. I had a skirt on, and it was a tighter skirt, but not super tight. But I was sitting down, and my teacher looked at me, and he said, skirt's a little short. But he was kind of sleazy. And I said, well, what are you looking for? I shouldn't tell you that. And I got sent to the office. But I didn't get in trouble because I worked in the office.
Oh.
I mean, I was told I shouldn't talk back to the teacher, but it was just to that. It was one of those, he was always making these remarks to girls that seemed a little off, and it just came out. Not a good thing, right? I shouldn't be telling you that because I'm supposed to be a really good person, but it was just one of those things. What are you looking for? It was kind of just but it wasn't nice. I shouldn't have done that, but I did. I got in trouble for kind of talking back to a teacher and sent to the office. But I worked in the office. They were nice to me. But yeah, that was it. And it just goes back, girls wanting to, but at that time I didn't hike my skirt up. It's just when you sat down, they came up above your knee.
Yeah.
And that was something that was kind of like, I don't know.
All right. Well, that's the end of my questions, so thank you for that.